Hello everyone, my name is Kennedy and I'm going to do the video presentation for class for the 10 simple rules for making a good oral presentation. First, give acknowledgement to the author of this research article, Philip Bourne. And that's what I'm starting off with. Also, our PowerPoint that was given to us for class by our teacher. So the 10 simple rules for this that I'm going to begin with is talking to the audience, remembering that less is more, only talk when you have something to say, make the take-at-home message persistent, be logical, treat the floor as a stage, practice and time your presentation, as well as use visuals sparingly but effectively, review audio and video of your presentation, and provide the appropriate acknowledgements. So first, I want to start with rule number 1, and it's to remember and to know who your target audience is. With this is important to have an understanding of your audience's background. This is important because if you're giving a presentation or a topic of something that your audience doesn't, this is the first time they're hearing it, you want to give the proper information and be able to go into detail with what they need to know, what you want them to know. So it's important to prepare your presentation to address the audience to be able to do so, give a clear delivery to them, as well as create intimacy between the audience and the presenter, making eye contact, hand gestures, not really turning away or looking away during the presentation, but having that ability to look your audience in the face and in the eyes and give them that information. Rule number 2, it's important to have a main message at the forefront of your presentation. You want to have a good title, a good just way for the audience to understand what they're going to be learning and what they're going to be hearing. You want them to learn in your presentation, whether it's the first time they're hearing about it or the 10th time they're hearing about it. Maybe they can take something different away. It's important to, if they have visual slides, we see a lot of times in college, and I was really bad at this in high school, is creating a PowerPoint and reading directly off the PowerPoint every single word for word, and it takes away from even the point of having a visual representation or a visual guide. And so you want to make sure that throughout if you're using a visual guide, just to be not reading every slide, but to be clear and concise with information you've prepared beforehand, and also to speak clearly so the audience has the ability to comprehend the information that you are giving them. I'm a really fast talker, especially when I get nervous, and so it sometimes becomes hard for people to understand what I'm even saying. And so it's important to speak clearly and speak slow enough for the audience to understand. Rule number 3 is to keep it short and relatively simple. I know it's hard to say keep it short when it's something that can be a complex topic, but in terms of keeping it short, it doesn't necessarily mean the time, but not to overkill a message or overkill information or to be too repetitive. You want to make sure that you're able to state what you're talking about, but also give that information quick enough to keep people engaged and within the presentation, within that topic. Rule number 4 is make the take-home message persistent. And this is important when creating a presentation in general. I would say create that take-home message from the get-go. What do you want your audience to learn and to take away from this? And even in the article, it stated that if an audience member a week from your presentation can name or can talk about 3 points and they're not the key points, that means you did a good job. And so I would create 3 key points that you want to talk about, but also have other key points in there that will keep the audience engaged from them learning and understanding. And it's important to have the take-home message at the end as well to reiterate what it is, and that's going to create a stronger connection from the beginning of your presentation to the end so that they're able to make connections throughout your presentation. Rule number 5 is be logical. This is important because we have to think about a presentation, and I think in the article he also described it as a story for your presentation. You want to have a beginning, a middle, and end. Your presentation, you want it to kind of have a rhythm, a flow, some sort of guidance throughout so that it's easy for them to follow. Your ending and your middle and your end should all be connected, or your beginning, your middle, and end should all be connected, and ending in a big way is also super powerful. Again, reiterating that take-home message at the end, but you want to make sure you have some sense of a flow, or again, like I explained it as a rhythm for your audience, and it'll try to keep them more engaged and more the ability to focus and pay attention to every word you're saying. And that's kind of the point with these presentations, is that they'll be able to have time to follow along with what you're saying. So the next one is treat the floor as your stage. And this doesn't necessarily mean some big production or, it's just to keep your audience engaged. And that's also important in an oral presentation, no matter the length, whether it's 10 minutes like we're doing today, or 20 minutes or 30 minutes like we see in TED Talks. We want to be able to keep them engaged. And I think it's really powerful. Even in TED Talks, you see them walking back and forth and following and engaging. And sometimes they do have visuals, but they're not turned around at the screen facing the whole time. And they're kind of witty with their responses, and some people are super powerful. So it's important to treat your audience as an audience and as people who are wanting to learn and to engage. And just I think the best way is think about some of the presentations you've had to sit through and you've had to watch, you've had to hear, and what presentations you have stayed engaged with, and what presentations you've kind of not, just fell back and weren't really paying attention. And you can kind of see those differences, especially just following through these 10 rules, how you can use those and apply those to presentations you've watched. And I think I did that with some of the presentations I've been able to sit through and had to sit through, and my engagement level, low or high, and kind of contrasted with these rules and how they've applied in those. So I think it's important to, yes, this is your moment to shine in those oral presentations, but also remember it's not necessarily a show, but you want to keep your audience engaged in what you're doing. So the next rule would be practice and time your presentation. I think this is very, very important. I used to get kind of stumbled up in high school as well. Sometimes I would meet the time limit, or sometimes I would go over the time limit, just depending on how nervous I was, or how knowledgeable I was on that topic sometimes. So I would just start to ramble. So I think it's important so we can get stuck on these tangents and not really follow through with what we've practiced, what we've told ourselves we're going to do 1,000,000 times. And so visual cues can be helpful, as well as like maybe a little sticky note or something to keep you kind of on track that you can look back to time and time again. Even PowerPoints are helpful. I think it's easy, and the articles of this as well, it's easy to get on tangents and start to convey these other messages that aren't truly in our presentation originally. And so it's important. Rule 8 is use visuals sparingly but effectively, and this is also very important. I think sometimes PowerPoints and prezis and videos and all that can be a little overwhelming for the audience when they're hearing messages, but they're also having to pay attention to these videos and get those messages. And so I think it's just important, if you're going to do a PowerPoint, if you're going to use a video, just to use it as a guide almost, but not as the presentation itself. It's very important. Rule number 9 is obviously reviewing your audio and your video of your presentation, and the format I think is super important. This can, you'll be able to see, just reviewing your video, what steps you've missed, or sometimes, and like are used so much interchangeably in our language and our sentence structure. And so sometimes just watching that and looking back and saying, you know what, let me word this in a different way, or let me try to say or like, or sometimes awkward pauses, try to take those out. And so just finding any bad habits that you are making in those videos, make an effort to remove those bad habits. And it also mentions that in the article. And I think also after hearing and learning more about these 10 rules, we can look back and apply those to our videos that we're watching. And the final rule is giving credit where credit is due. That's not the final rule, but it's giving the appropriate acknowledgments, but giving credit where credit's due, whether it's being organizations or people or articles, whatever that might be. You want to be able to give that proper thank you and appreciation, and show that you used their article or whatever it might be. You're thanking the people for being a part of your presentation or your study, whatever it might be. Give that appropriate thanks and that appropriate credit. So that's it for my video. Hope you were able to stay engaged, and hope you guys have a good night. Bye.